Alright, hi, welcome to another video that hopefully will help you with the IB Psychology course. In this video we're looking at the internal assessment, and specifically we're going to focus on how to write excellent exploration sections of the IA report. So we're assuming here that you've done all your data, you've conducted the experiment, and now you're in the final presentation stages. So just to recap, the IA, the final report, you're going to have 1800 to 2200 words, and there are four major sections: the introduction, exploration, analysis, and evaluation. After the evaluation, at the end, you'll also have your references and your appendices, and it's the same for HL and SL. So today we're going to look at the exploration section and what you need to do to score the top marks for that section. Alright, so now there are 5 parts that you need to write about in your exploration: your research design, your sampling method, your participants, your materials, and your controlled variables. It's very important that you have these 5 things covered in your exploration. And what I would suggest doing, and what I like to see, is bold headings and subheadings. So there's a bold heading at the top that says exploration in your report, and then you use these 5 subheadings that are also bolded or underlined or somehow make them stand out, so you know and your reader knows that you've covered those 5 things. Yeah, so let's look at the rubric. If we can see, to get 1 or 2 marks, there's only one difference between these two things, right? Top marks or middle marks. Described or explained. Described or explained. The sampling technique is described, the sampling technique is explained. So clearly you have to explain these 5 things to get the top marks. So what does it mean to explain? How do we make sure we're doing that? And what's the difference from an explanation to a description? Let's break it down. The first thing you have to do is you have to state. Use proper experimental terminology, and you have to state what it is you did. And I'll give you a couple examples shortly. The second thing is describe what or how you did. So a little bit of a summary of your procedures. And the third thing is explain why. The difference between a description and an explanation, one of the primary differences, is you're giving a reason in an explanation. Okay, you're going further than just saying what you did, but you're going further and saying why you did that. So again, coming back to these 3 things. Research design. State what design you used, describe how you used it, and why you did it. Sampling method. State the sampling method. Describe how you got your sample using that method, explain why. Right? Participants, state who your participants were, the characteristics, and that's kind of going into the description here. But importantly, explain why you chose those participants. So choose 1 or 2 characteristics. Materials, state the materials you used, bullet points is fine. Describe how you used them and explain why. And when you're explaining your materials, choose the materials that are unique to your experiment. So don't explain your choice of desk or pencil or projector, but any tool that you used to either to manipulate the independent variable or collect your data on the dependent variable. So any instrument that you've had to design that's unique to your experiment. So if it's a list of reading words, or if it's a video they have to watch, if it's some sort of test, then that's what you're stating and explaining why you use that. And for controlled variables, right? State what are the possible confounding variables and describe how you controlled for them and why. What possible, how might have they influenced your research? Now, what you'll find here is that in your explaining your design, your sampling, your participants, and your materials, you might have already been explaining how you were controlling particular variables. In which case, you can avoid doubling up and just say, see, research design for an explanation of controlled variables, etc. In our teacher support pack for the IA, which I'll explain later, there's an example of an IA that I've written that shows you how you can do that, how you can reference other parts of your report so you're not doubling up on things that you've said. So here's an example explanation of a design. Okay, I've chosen this one. So remember, I have to state, describe, explain. So I'm going to state what my design type was. Right, then I'm going to describe how I use that design. And the description is really important because the examiner and the reader needs to know that you're using the term correctly. So if you just say independent samples and you don't tell us what you did, well then there's no way we can actually know if you really did an independent sample or not. So you have to describe how you use that, and then again saying why you used it. So in our experiment we used a repeated measures design. First sentence stating exactly what I've done. Repeated measures design, that's my statement. Then, in my second sentence, I'm describing how I did it. Participants took the placebo on one day, and then on a different day took the remember all pill. Okay, now here I'm saying this is how, right? Now I can see that's repeated measures. They did one treatment on one day and another treatment on another day. The order of days for each treatment was randomized. Okay, maybe I'll explain that in my controls later. I don't need to explain it now because I'm just focusing on the design. We chose, so that second sentence is a description. Third sentence, my explanation. We chose repeated measures because if we used independent samples, then participant variability could have been a confounding variable. Now, that's a sentence that's an attempted explanation there. But I need this last part from the because onwards in red here. I need this because this is very generic. Right? This could apply to any single study. So I'm not really showing that I've analyzed my methodology. But here, what I'm doing in my situation, I'm giving a very specific reason why participant variability could have influenced my particular methodology. And this, I think, is important to get the full marks. Making it unique and using specific details to your experiment to show that you've analyzed your methodology. If your explanation can apply to any study, then I think it's weak. So here I'm saying because some participants might have better reading comprehension skills than others, we had a small sample, so the differences might affect the results. Okay, I'm focusing on reading comprehension in my study. This is a very fictional about, remember, a drug I use in my examples all the time. Those who use my textbook might be familiar with this. So here, now again, that's 3 sentences, but I think the order is important, right? Because we start broad. What did I do? Give the reader some context, describe how, and explain why. 3 sentences. I would like to think if I did that for all 5 sections of the exploration, right, I'd get top marks. Again, state, describe, explain. All right, so to recap, exploration, you're going to explain all 5 parts. State your design, state your sampling method, state your participants, control variables, materials. Then describe how you did those things in your report. And then importantly, the 3rd step, explain why. And again, I think that these should all be bold headings. And this should be a very big bold heading, the exploration, and these could be subheadings as well in your report. All right, so I hope that was helpful. If you're a teacher and you need some more help with your internal assessment, then I recommend our support pack. It's got workbooks, unit plans, lesson plans. It's got an example IA. It's got checklists. There's additional explanations there for things like null hypotheses and inferential statistics, which a lot of people struggle with. And there's heaps more in there. So that goes along with chapter 7 of our textbook. But even if you're not using our textbook, you might find it helpful because it's got a bunch in there to help you and your students. All right, I really hope that video was helpful. To me, the exploration is very difficult because there's 5 things you have to cover. But I think if you just take the time and be a little methodical, you should be able to write really good explorations that will get you top marks. So hope that was helpful. Subscribe to the blog. The link to everything that you need is in the comments. All right, thank you very much.